everyone, I'm Dana Perino along with Kimberly Guilfoyle, Juan Williams, Jesse Waters, and Greg Gutfeld. It's 5 o'clock in New York City, and this is The Five. This is serious. A flood of news stories are fueling the debate over immigration in America. Republican lawmakers meeting today to try and settle a battle over the party's path forward on this issue. Speaker Paul Ryan commenting afterwards.
We just had a very productive conference meeting in the House Republican Conference to discuss solutions to our broken immigration system. This is a conversation that will continue, and hopefully we can find a path ahead that is consistent with the 4 pillars that the president laid out.
New Department of Homeland Security data for May showing a surge in the number of family and unaccompanied minor border crossing arrests. Those numbers rising significantly compared to the same time last year. This all coming as the acting ICE director is pushing back against liberal criticism with some surprising information.
If you look at our numbers last year, 72% of everybody arrested was a convicted criminal. If you look at criminal history, those that were either convicted or pending criminal charges, 89% of everybody we arrested last year had a criminal history. That's 9 out of 10.
And the Democratic mayor of Philadelphia is celebrating a court ruling against the Trump administration on sanctuary cities by doing this.
A sanctuary city, yeah.
The White House is calling those dance moves quite disgusting. And the arrest of an illegal immigrant, New York City pizza delivery man, is making national headlines. Pablo Villavicencio is facing deportation after being detained earlier this month while dropping off food at a military base. Guards there discovering an active ICE warrant while doing a background check. So lots of immigration stories to talk about today. Kimberly, I'm going to give you the run of the table. Which one do you want to talk about?
Yes, all of it. I want to take the table. So I think it's particularly interesting to me here. It's like when you look at this, you see it as sort of a human interest story, somebody trying to work, do the job, but nevertheless has an active detainer in the system.
This is the pizza delivery man.
Absolutely, pizza delivery man. And so when you see a situation like that and you show pictures of him and his family, you think, wow, what are we going to do about people like this who are trying to make a living, but nevertheless, the law is the law, right? That there was an active detainer. It has to be upheld. If they have a detainer, they're remiss if they don't take
Well, and
it.
he had promised a judge in 2010 that he would leave within 2 months.
And he didn't. People overstay. You hear that all the time. Nice people with nice families, but you have to have some bright line rules here or we won't have order in a lawful society. And we have an obligation to do that because the rules can apply to some people, but not to others. So you want to have uniformity. You want to be fair in the way that you handle it, but part of that fairness is an approach where the law is actually enforced.
And partly for him, for the pizza delivery man, I mean, maybe you shouldn't go to a military base, possibly. I don't know. I don't know.
No pizza for you?
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, he didn't have the right ID, so you can't blame the guys at the fort for what they're doing because they have to follow the law because you can't have somebody who is an illegal fugitive, he's actually a fugitive because of 2010, he didn't leave, to show up there. That's just, you would lose you would be punished, so I get the side. However, you feel bad for this guy because you're in a system where we are struggling to stay ahead, keep our head above water. So this non-criminal pizza guy gets screwed, and it's because the Democrats won't let even feds go after the bad guys. The hammer that we use gets wider and blunter.
Yeah.
So we do get the 9 out of 10. But we also get the 1 out of 10 because we have to hit everybody. And I go back to one thing I've always said about the media narrative on this, which is really screwing up this debate. They make it about 2 ideas only. Either you're for total immigration or you're a xenophobe. And the fact is, with immigration, you can hold a portfolio of positions, right? You can be for some immigration, you can be against some immigration. You can be specific kinds and give special credit to people who contribute. But at the same time, you could want to build a wall and say you want to have a giant gate. This is very important. With immigration, you should be able to hold competing positions, portfolio positions, rather than let the media dictate the narrative and tell you it's either this or this. It can be, you can have 5 positions on immigration. And that's the healthiest way to look at this.
Right.
You could say the pizza guy, you know what Donald Trump should do? Donald Trump should probably try to help the pizza guy out.
Trump should pardon the pizza
Pardon-
guy.
give him clemency.
Pizza pardon
Pizza pardon.
and a pizza party
It's
instead
not a
of a
bad
beer
idea.
summit.
It's actually not a bad idea.
Isn't that a great idea?
Hashtag pizza pardon.
Because remember, he got the warrant under Obama. So Trump can go, this is all Obama's fault.
Yeah,
this is Obama's fault. Let's get this guy out.
Yeah, who
Well,
doesn't
the
like
other
pizza?
thing, though, I mean,
Good point, Jesse. Food court tomorrow, pizza
Food
party.
court
it's
tomorrow.
an interesting idea, Juan. What if you could make an argument that a stronger border policy and structure, a wall, would have made it easier for people who are here and law-abiding to some sort, even though we should have self-deported, that the wall would make it better for the people who are here and want to stay and want to work and are here legally. Like, if you want to get to some sort of amnesty point, or we need another word for that. But President Trump has said he's willing to do a lot on DACA. If the Democrats would give him a little bit of money for the wall, they might be able to get some sort of grand bargain.
Yeah,
Why do you
that's
look
a
so
bad
confused?
deal. Well, I
Why
was
is that
trying
a
to
bad
listen.
deal?
I
That's
was
a
trying to
great
listen
deal.
to you to respond to your question.
That's the art of the deal right there.
Right. But on the
hashtag.
pizza guy, this is so crazy to me because this guy's been in and out of this place, this installation in Brooklyn, many times, and he has issued ID by the city of New York where he lives. His wife's an American citizen. He has 2 children born here in the USA, and he's applied for legal status. So he was in the system, applied. So what you guys say is absolutely true, that he was told in 2010 to leave and did not leave at that time, since applied. And all that we have here is, oh, there's a new security guard who didn't recognize him even though he's delivered pizza there repeatedly. And then that guy, when the police come and say, well, there's no big deal here, they say, no, we're going to really have to call ICE, right? So all of a sudden it becomes politicized and this poor little guy gets squished. And I just think, to me, this is an example of how things go out of control.
But I don't
And
know
so-
if it was
wait, let me finish. The
politicized.
point is,
He was just following the rules.
no, it's not following the
No,
rules.
the
They're
new
going
security guy
overboard.
was following the rules.
No, the security guard went overboard, Jesse, by suddenly getting ICE involved. Is this guy a threat? This is
He
like
would
Trump
not
saying,
consider that.
"Oh, please, this
going
is like."
overboard. He would consider that following the rules.
That's not
Juan.
following any rules. There was
Sure
no
it is.
rule requiring him to call ICE. This, to my mind, just to make, to pick up on the jokes that are being made, this is like Trump saying, oh, we're going to impose tariffs on Canada because they burned down the White House, when in fact it was the British. It's totally confused. And Greg, you
Wait,
can have
wasn't
many
Canada
different.
in an alliance
Yes.
with the British?
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, but they
But
weren't.
don't worry about
Canada
that.
didn't burn down the
Small
White
detail.
House.
Small fact.
Small
I talk
detail.
about fake news. You're gonna have Canada burning down the White House in 1814. then.
Wait, how did we
Do we
get
need
off
a history
track?
lesson,
my
Juan?
God.
I think the Canadians were in
Holy
alliance
smokes.
with the British.
Yeah, I don't
Holy
think-
smokes indeed.
Oh yeah, but
Jesse,
let me just say,
blame
you
it on
can
the
have
French. Blame it on the
have many positions on
French Canadians.
immigration.
Right.
And in fact, I think the news of the day is what we just heard from Paul Ryan, which is says, oh yeah, we're going to have a vote. But the problem is that the far right of the Republican Party, the Freedom Caucus, thinks in terms that Dana was objecting to, where everything is amnesty. If you make a deal, it's amnesty. The moderates are simply saying, let's work on something
But didn't the
that
Dems
would
block
allow a
GW on
legitimate
this?
reform system to take hold in this country with regard to more than 10 million. Because you got more than 10 million people. You can't do a pizza guy job on all 10 million
Well,
people.
you can have a lot of different positions on immigration, and all of yours happen to be wrong.
Thank you.
I think what we're talking about here
I would agree
is
with you, but then we'd
doing
both be wrong.
a deal on immigration.
That hurt my brain.
Where
Is
you
this guy something?
where you
Unbelievable.
secure the border and then you take care of the people that are inside the country right now. What we've done for decades is give them amnesty and not secure the border. And that's why we keep on having these problems. The Democrats will not secure the border. That's why there's no deal, Juan.
Let me just
because you're going
suggest
to keep
to you, Jesse,
having people come in
Jesse,
illegally
this is
until you
not-
solve that problem.
Jesse, first of all, this is not about amnesty. This is about us as an American people who have more than 10 million people here illegally.
And a part of the
And-
negotiation
and-
is putting a pathway to citizenship
not for
on the
him.
table
Wait
for
a second.
DACA
Will you
people.
listen to someone else?
pizza,
Let
but,
someone else
Well, but let me-
the
let me-
pizza guy would not have been
He's
eligible.
not a priority
Thank
for me
you.
either. I agree with that.
The solution is 2 words: Donald DACA. That's all it is. He could totally destroy the Democratic
Yes.
Party by introducing his path to citizenship. Call it Donald DACA. Make it simple, straightforward, clear path for the good and for the people who contribute. Whether you enlist in the army,
Right.
whether you're a guy who's working, who has no prison criminal record, and has a family, and you can still build that wall because you want the wall, you want the gate. But that's not just good politics. That is good policy. And That's what we want because, again, you know, Eric Weinstein makes this point that mass immigration advocates depend on a false narrative that all restrictions are xenophobic, when in fact you can love other cultures but believe in restrictions because it helps jobs in other countries keep the talent from leaving and helps for jobs in this country so other people can get jobs.
Well, the other thing is that President Trump can do if he does Donald DACA and all of those things. He should dare the conservatives and the Freedom Caucus to go against him.
Yeah.
I mean, let's see how that goes, Kimberly.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a great strategy. And he's been very successful at doing this type of thing where people wouldn't necessarily think he'd champion an issue. He takes it, he makes it his own, and he markets it and puts it forward. And I think this is a really good opportunity because this has been such an intractable issue for years and years and years. But there is a motivation and interest from the public to be able to do something about it, right? Because it's rife with problems in terms of sanctuary cities. You've got people that, going crazy about that. You see so many divide and division in California over it. You've got law and justice saying, listen, we need some help here. We want to enforce the law, but we also want to show that we're doing so in a meaningful way that appreciates people who are ordinarily and for the most part law-abiding, that want to contribute, and we would also like your tax dollars.
The question then is, because I think so much of what you're saying is rational, I just think, well, if Donald Trump was to do this, he would anger the people that Dana's talking about because
but they can't win against
immigrants.
him.
I'm sorry?
But they can't win against him.
Yeah. Yes, they will.
He has no problem
because
taking off these people.
He's angering people with the free trade stuff right now.
No, but he's angering people.
He's throwing tariffs around like crazy.
That's anti-free
and half
trade.
the Republicans
exactly, which upsets people like me. I don't think he cares.
You don't think he cares, but he's got to care going towards the midterms about his base. And that's why the Freedom Caucus says we don't want a vote in Congress because they're worried that hardline anti-immigrant conservatives will say, oh, what happened to the pledge to fight these horrible immigrants?
You can do it in December. Do it after the election.
But you need the wall funding.
Build the wall. That makes one side happy, and then you have the gate.
All right. Time magazine with a provocative new cover taking aim at President Trump for pushback against the Mueller probe. We'll discuss next.
You be the pretty and I'll be the funny. You plant the flowers, I'll plant the kisses, baby.
As President Trump fights back against the special counsel's Russia probe, attacks from the left keep on coming. Check out the newest cover of Time magazine depicting the president as a king for pushing back against the investigation. The president's lawyer, Rudy Giuliani, is also continuing to go after Mueller's team.
They are a group of 13 highly partisan Democrats that make up the Mueller team, excluding him, are trying very, very hard to frame him, to get him in trouble when he hasn't done anything wrong. Now, they may not know they're doing it. They may not realize they're doing it. But they can't emotionally come to grips with the fact that this whole thing of Russian collusion didn't happen.
Okay, so Rudy Giuliani, the president's lawyer, Jesse, pushing back against this whole, notion, actually has been quite verbal, quite vocal, and public, coming out making these comments over the last few weeks.
Yeah, I've told you my theory on this. The people in the government under Obama in that spring were using the Trump people as bait. They thought the Russians were trying to, play fast and loose and try to mess with the election. So they sent out a bunch of traps and they tried to lure the Russians in to collude. And they found out Russians didn't really bite. There was not a lot of hacking done with the Trump people and the Russians. They never even took the server. There was never any really hard evidence of collusion. So then all of a sudden you get around to the next spring, and when Trump fires Comey, that just justifies this entire collusion investigation, because we've never seen any evidence of the collusion. We have seen evidence of massive stonewalling from the Department of Justice and the FBI. They won't allow any interviews to take place with the FBI agents. We still can't get the Flynn documents. Papadopoulos apparently never even committed perjury about when he said he met this so-called Russian professor. He was instead jammed by Mueller to say they were going to charge him with being a spy for Israel. That's what he pled to. And we haven't seen any documents with regards to the spy. We haven't seen any documents with regard to the FISA warrant. Only some people have seen it. And then Strzok. Where's Strzok? All we know about Strzok now, he had more of a role in this entire thing with the Clinton investigation and the Trump investigation. There's a lot of answers on that side that still I'd like to know.
You've been asking where is Strzok for quite some time. You said on Hannity last night, where is Strzok?
You know, I should have shown up at his doorstep with a camera, old school Waters World style. But
Missed opportunity, man.
I know.
All right, Dana, so what do you make of Rudy's message here? He's obviously the president's lawyer, but he's going out strong in terms of, aggressive against the Mueller investigation. What do you think of that approach?
Well, I guess in the court of public opinion for the president's base, it works very well for him at this point. And then I think that one of the reasons that there's not been any evidence, there's either two reasons. Either there is no evidence, or it's because the Mueller team doesn't leak. And I don't think we know the answer to that. And the president has so much on his plate right now that I think if he's talking about North Korea like he did today, and letting Rudy Giuliani, if he wants to have his lawyer out there talking about this, that's probably a better idea than him talking about it.
Greg, you are a highly acclaimed, not just in your own mind, magazine editor.
That is
way
true.
back. Yes.
That is true, Kimberly.
So what do you think about this cover?
Well, I believe that Time officially has become a high school newspaper. It is. Let's try these out.
Then Dana would be the editor.
Time is officially thinner than Joy Reid's explanation for her blog posts.
Pretty thin.
Pretty thin. Time magazine is thinner than Brian Stelter's hairline.
Ooh. Very thin.
Very mean.
Time magazine is thinner than CNN's lead over the Cartoon Network.
Oh.
You like that one?
Rough.
Thinner than the plot for a porn movie.
Pass.
By the way,
don't know.
Also in CNN's
the same
wheelhouse.
people that are accusing Donald Trump of being like a king were probably the same people, kneeling before Obama for 8 years. So this is what, I don't blame Time, because this is what you do when you're out of power. They're just admitting that they're part of the team that is out of power. They're no longer. Remember a time when you were growing up?
Yes, it was so important.
It was great. It was like so you did little book reports on Time.
Yes.
You'd take it to school.
You used it in speech team.
Exactly. Time is out of time.
Time is out of time.
Run out.
All right, so Juan, what do you make of this cover? I mean, the president has a right to be able to defend himself and push back. He says he's innocent. He hasn't done anything wrong. So what's wrong with sticking up for yourself? You've been falsely accused.
You guys must have missed the news. I understand why, because you're busy with all this blabbering.
What?
But the news is that Giuliani said the president can pardon himself. Now, gee, does that sound like an autocrat? Does that sound like a king to anybody?
We did that on Monday.
We did.
Were you still on vacation?
No, but you must have missed it because we have an entire discussion about why a major American media company would put that image on the cover. And you're like, well, I think they're just picking on him. Oh, those crazy Democrats, terrible elite media. Oh, no reason for this. The president's just defending himself. Defending himself. First of all, is Giuliani really a lawyer, or is he just the pit bull out there to make a lot of noise for the base? Because I mean,
could be both.
You can be
I don't
both.
get it. I don't understand.
It's very simple to
The second
understand.
thing to say is the president's out there tweeting today, oh, these guys are terrible. They're a bunch of Democrats. Wait a minute. You can't check on these lawyers. It would be illegal for Mueller to check on the political donations or credentials.
But the media already did that.
They've done it, but it's not his job. He got the best lawyers. And
They just all happen to be Democrats.
Well, they are. What do you want me to tell you?
Oh, no
And the
good Republican lawyers out there.
I didn't say that. I just said he
if you would've
got
picked
people
evenly, you
with
might have had a few
expertise
Republicans.
to serve his purposes.
Well, Mueller
Now,
is a Republican.
in
name
fact,
only.
Mueller's a Republican,
Oh, that's what
and
they
the
say
guy
about
who
anybody
appointed
that
him,
disagrees.
What they said
Rosenstein's a
about Comey.
Republican.
Oh, gosh.
Oh, my God.
Comey's a
But the
leaker in
big
the library.
point,
I thought that was the last point.
No,
No, it wasn't.
I'll tell you the last point.
Blabbering.
The last point
Loaves
is
and
that,
fishes keeps making more.
is that Giuliani is really trying to make this a contest of public opinion, right? So it's not about the law. He says when we get a report coming from the Mueller investigation, and now it looks like that's likely to come in September before the midterms. Oh, well then it's up to the public to say, ignore it. And he has what's the president's rating among Republicans now? High 70s or 80s?
87.
Right. So it's near record numbers because in this current political environment, if you're a Republican, well, forget if you're a moderate, you got to be a Trump Republican, and anything that the king says, you got to bow down.
Yeah, never mind the fact that we might be entering a historic stage with North Korea. We've got low unemployment. We have more jobs.
You want to talk about something else,
Let's
Greg?
just talk about
something else,
Trump.
Greg.
But you know what's so? Because last time I read the Constitution, the president, and just like any of us, has a right to defend himself, his campaign, his family against false accusations. That's what makes this country
Well, let's
great.
see if
so
it's
he's not
false.
committed any crime there.
Maybe it's not false.
We'll get the results of that. President Trump keeps the pressure on Kim Jong-un to denuclearize ahead of the North Korea summit. All the latest next.
What would be the biggest diplomatic meeting in his tenure. How can that be?
Well, remember what he said about the first debate? You know, I'm not really preparing. I don't need to cram. And then he left a lot on the table. So I hope that's a lot of bluster, and he is kind of brushing up on what he needs to brush up on. But I understand where he's coming from, because it's a very clear strategy. It's either you're going to denuclearize or the sanctions will remain and they'll get ratcheted up.
Right.
And you don't really have to prep that hard, but he will, and I'm sure he'll do it on the plane ride over there. But Pompeo, I mean, it's a pretty startling announcement to hear that Kim has actually told him verbally that that is his goal, to denuclearize. So I'm really glad to hear that, and he told Dennis Rodman that in not so many words as well, so it looks like it's consistent. We talked about the other day of, we're trying to lure him in with the goodies and capitalism in America and Singapore, and that's why he's dangling the Mar-a-Lago summit out there, and that's pretty attractive for someone like Kim. He can go stuff his face and enjoy the sun in wealth, but you have a situation where Abe was here today. He's more of the hawk, the Japanese prime minister, and then you have Moon in South Korea, who's more of the dove. So Trump's going to have to play both of those guys off each other. And then China, who knows what they want? They might like North Korea status quo, because I don't know how they're going to feel with a bunch of American allies and, capitalist democracies hovering right around their doorstep. So we'll see what happens.
So Abe was here, the Japanese prime minister, Kimberly, and he was making the point to President Trump that you've got to deal with human rights. I think the Japanese have 12 citizens still being held by North Korea. Is that on the table, or is that really just being nice to the visiting Japanese prime minister?
No, I don't think, I think he likes him quite, much. He has a really good relationship with him. He's spoken to him probably about 20 times, since President Trump has become president. So this is a significant relationship that they have established. They get along very well, which is always helpful in terms of international diplomatic relations. I think that he's being honest and forthright with him. And I think with somebody like, President Trump, who thinks out of the box, right? That's a businessman at his heart, like Greg always says from Queens. Everything's on the table till he decides it's not.
So we don't know.
Yeah, but that's part of the mystery of the negotiation, is that they're always left a little bit off bounds because they're not entirely sure, because he could agree or do just about
Obama, I
anything.
think, tied the hostages to the Iran deal a little bit. I think when the cash went over, those hostages came back the same day.
Well, I don't want to set any high bars.
Not all of them.
Yeah. But Dana, this comes to an interesting point. The Democrats sent a letter, Schumer and some of his followers, to President Trump today, and it said, unless you were able to verify and unless you have Kim Jong-un dismantling his weapons, what is this about?
People who are being held in North Korea. At the very end of the press conference today, after the questions were all asked, the president said, I just want to take a moment. And he mentions Otto Warmbier and the family and the other 3 hostages. And I'm not positive, but I have a feeling that might have been a strategic move, because Kim Jong-un and his people are analyzing all of this. And if they think that it would help them to get the president to give them more, because the Japanese would be more satisfied with whatever deal is coming if they got their people back as well, I think that it might have been a little bit of a signal.
100%.
That sounds great. So, Greg, the hard question comes for you.
Yes.
Because we go back to our friend Rudy Giuliani.
Yes.
And Rudy says, oh, that Kim Jong-un, little rocket man, right, Kimberly?
Yes.
And your friend, Jesse, is on his knees and begging. Well, so Dana's talking about signals. What kind of signal is this?
This is the most, I think, the most important thing that was said at this table is surprisingly, what Dana said. No, I'm kidding. I'm joking.
Great
It's
point,
a joke.
Journal.
No,
because it was real.
The North Koreans are analyzing everything, and they're not just analyzing the White House. They're analyzing the press and how the press presents this.
And this show.
And I believe that they watch everything. Someone's got to put a sock in Giuliani's mouth, because the fact is he's kicking over a sandcastle here. There's been a lot of stuff being built that could happen and could lead to something historic. And you're going around and you're saying this kind of junk. It undermines the progress that set this table, because this table is a process. It's about the barrier to all of this was the belief that you could end up like Libya. And that's the thing, is like what Trump is trying to say in making clear, that's not what we want. This is not about a regime change. This is about a reduced threat. In return for the reduced threat, you get a seat at the most plentiful table on earth. And that's why it's important about the messages.
But that was the thing, that when John Bolton talked about the Libya model, it wasn't the later Libya model. It was the initial Libya model, which is that he gave up his chemical and nuclear ambitions because of what happened to Saddam Hussein.
Right. And then what happened
is... And then later on, there was the Arab Spring.
And you got to make sure that that doesn't... You got to... These people have to understand that's not what we're doing.
The other thing is...
Rudy,
can I add one thing?
Oh, sure. Go ahead.
Just to Greg's point about how they are analyzing everything. I will always look at the Wall Street Journal trending stories. The #1 story for 3 days in a row has been Giuliani's comments that Kim Jong-un was begging on his knees for the summit to take place. So if the Wall Street Journal makes it to Pyongyang, they'll see it.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah,
by the way, Rudy, it wasn't me. It wasn't me. I didn't say put a sock in your mouth. It wasn't me.
I did. I did, because it's for the good of the world. It's the good of the world.
Yeah. Well, then maybe how about, Spygate was made up. You could use that one too, Rudy.
I think they're dangling the Mar-a-Lago thing too, because he wants to come here. He loves Dennis Rodman. He loves U.S.
But I think I would actually have a hard time with that if this is a guy who is so evil and I know human rights isn't on the table on Tuesday, but it better be out.
I don't even think that's...
Before the control room sends me to North Korea, Google caves to pressure from its employees. Is the tech giant putting political correctness before national security? A Gregory monologue. Next.
That was like a story in the Daily Beast.
.com.
Talk about my music.
Wow. Do a Google search for callow jerkwads, and what do you find? Google itself. We told you how thousands of their employees signed a letter protesting Google's work with Project Maven, an effort to make our drones more precise so civilian lives are spared. It's a good thing. Now Google has pulled out of the project under pressure from those workers, apparently doing anything connected to our military, which protects the lives of those same pasty workers at Google. It's just bad for their brand. But Google, you know what's bad for your brand? You. Your motto used to be, don't be evil. But isn't what you just did kind of the opposite? And yet, while deciding not to help our military with their AI, you invest fortunes in other countries' AI. What do you think they're going to do with that? D-Day being yesterday, that's the opposite of good timing. Now, I'm not going to call you traitorous. You're just scared. You're scared because in this day and age, among your peers, helping Uncle Sam is helping the oppressor. Oh, you love the wealth, but now dismiss those who enable and protect it. How removed you become from the ideas your parents and their parents and their parents fought for. The decision Google made is one, of course, that they can make, but it's foolish and harmful. As drones become an inevitable part of our defenses and our enemies' offenses, Google made a choice. Maybe we should do the same. Dana, it drives me crazy. It's hard to, you can't just say I'm no longer using Google.
Right.
Because then all of a sudden I'm going to Google other options.
And Bing pops up.
Bing. Does Bing still work?
I don't know.
I use Ask Jeeves. Does anybody still use that?
I use Alta Vista Digital.
America, then you should probably help our military.
This is what gets, because Schmidt's no longer there, correct? He would, and they're selling stuff to China, or they're working with China Google, right?
Yeah, I'm afraid to criticize Google because they might leak my search history, and then I'm toast. But I will say...
Why did you just say that out loud?
I will say it's a weasel move because the terrorists are getting access to drone technology, so you want to defend against that. America, in a sick way, is almost too safe. Do you remember World War I, World War II? The threats were everywhere. We had domestic attacks. People were getting shipped overseas to fight for our country. We're so far removed from that. We don't have the sense of patriotism and nationalism that we used to. We can afford to, let these things slide and not protect the nation like it used to be protected.
We need to be more worried about clear and present danger, is what you're saying,
Yeah.
in terms of an imminent threat, or actually more on high alert about something, to say, you know what, we really do want to do whatever it takes to keep ourselves safe, like after 9/11, when people
We had that
were
after
willing,
9/11.
they had the wherewithal to be able to say, you know what, I'm open to this because I want to make sure that this does not happen again. So then there runs the risk of times, passing, and you become a little bit complacent, or you feel a little bit too safe.
Right. The wake-up call then.
One, it's obviously their business. We talk about businesses can do whatever they want. The NFL can do what they want. Google can do what they want. But the nature of this technology, by its very precision, is designed to reduce collateral damage.
Correct.
So what could be their